Hello and welcome back to the channel. So in this one, this is actually going to be a bit more long-winded than recent videos have been, because this is really an overhang from when I was really properly doing the beginner's guide to armour modelling, which is still going on, but it's more, we're moving on through the sort of difficulty, I guess, and so this one was meant to be, as soon as this kit came out, I bought it and we were going to build it through, see what's what, and try and do as best we can using similar techniques that I've described in previous videos. For those of you who realise and know when this came out, it was in 2020, so it's been going on for some time now, and I've obviously been building this kit for some time, but it's a lovely kit. It's a kind of 90% new mould, with a couple of older bits, which is the wheels and the lower hull turb. And obviously you can see my blue background that I haven't used for a few years. But as I go on through, I'm just kind of showing you how this one comes together. It's Tamiya's more ingenious kind of way of going about stuff, with sided parts, which means you can't really get them in the wrong way. They only go in one way, and when they go in, they fit flush. If they don't do that, then it's probably user error. Same here, it's just showing the sort of joy of having a nice kit where things just fit, touch of Tamiya extra thin, it all works together, and it really brings the experience through. I mean, you can get more out of other models, I guess, as far as details concerned, out of the box, with one thing and another, but it is difficult to match the quality of a Tamiya kit when it is all singing and all dancing like this one is. There are a couple downsides to this if you're looking for a bit more of a intricate build or a more detailed build. The tracks leave a little bit to be desired on some holes on the side of the track that we'll get to in a moment, and obviously there's no photo etch, so kits of this price you are getting photo etch for the same thing. I think you got a Border Models kit that was out around the same time, which had arguably more detail, so there are these things you need to consider. But the one good thing about Tamiya is it's usually on sale. If there's models on sale, there's usually Tamiya, and if there is, you tend to get the same sort of models, which this would be one of, so availability is much better. You wouldn't always see Border Models, Dragon, RFM creeping up as much. That's another one as well, the RFMG would be similar to this model as well. It's just a longer barreled version with side skirts, and so there's a lot out there. But with all that said, like I said, there is a joy to building a Tamiya kit. We're not stranger to a Tamiya kit on the channel. There's good reason for that. Good mojo builders, nice things to build on through. The stalling that happened on this build is really due to me trying to do too much, I guess, and one and another thing, not liking it and not knowing how to do certain techniques. I go to town with the weathering when we get into it. I also bring a base into this as well, so we put it on a little scene and we paint the figures. So there was a lot going on, and it took a while to get it done, but nevertheless we're away now. So this is going to be a three-parter. This part really just shows you how the build goes together, and kind of warts and all, although it is a bit sped up. And then the next build, the next part is going to show the painting. So we've got a little bit of complexity when it comes to the painting and the marking schemes, and then as we go on through there, we'll finish off the base and paint the figures. So they'll be weekly, so they'll be one after another, so no need to wait too long. And you can see here now we're just building up the major parts of the lower hull to then get the wheels on. So we've got a bit of armour going around the front of the sprocket arm. Transmission arm, I guess, was where the sprocket joins. We've got idlers as well. These are the older ones, so these date from sort of 1990s. I think it's 1997 the first Panzer IV was tooled by Tamiya, and then they've gone back and then just given you all the parts for the upper hull. So they've utilised their suspension, wheels and lower hull tub, from the original kits, and the rest of it is new. And I don't think there's any problem with that, to be honest. Most people like to put a lot of mud on the running gear. I certainly have. And the parts of the running gear that you can see, I got no complaints whatsoever on what it is you can see. I don't think there's any reason to have more detail there than what's provided. And it no doubt would make the kit more expensive, make it less attractive, I guess, for Tamiya to go and produce. But yeah, as you can see, the way this comes together is what you come to expect. You know, you put it in, it fits, and it's as simple as that. The extra thin cement that we're using here, so that's a quick setting with the kind of limey coloured top. There's a green top and then a kind of yellowy green top. The yellowy green top is quick setting. The other one is not quick setting, I guess. It's just straight up Tamiya extra thin. Not a lot of difference between the two, to be honest. They both do kind of gas off very fast. It's the kind of thing you put the piece in and then apply the glue, rather than putting the glue in and then applying the piece on top. Because if you do it the other way, you'll find that it will have dried up by the time you get the piece in place. So it's using capillary action. I think a lot of us are using this now. It's basic stuff. But as I said, we're going to go right from the, for everyone. So if you built hundreds of models, you should find this as enjoyable as if this is your first model. Using a metal ruler there just to make sure everything's true and square, so our wheels are touching the ground. Always an important thing to get right with tanks, because there's nothing worse than seeing sort of floating wheels or wheels not touching tracks, and so on. So trying to make sure everything's lined up, even with a well-tooled kit like this Tamiya one, there's still wiggle room, so you can get things misaligned. But this was one of the best ones. So here I'm showing you what I've actually done. This isn't for the faint-hearted, and I wouldn't do this again. But I've drilled out those holes that are on the side of the Panzer IV track. So it went through a few guises, the Panzer IV track. This is a, what should we call it, mid version, which had these holes put on the side. I did know the correct German term for it, but it's for putting on extenders. It's not actually for putting on the winter ketting, I don't believe, which is the proper bit that juts out the side. I think it's for putting on ice cleats. They just kind of go on the side. There's a famous picture of a Panzer IV F like this in German grey, which has been abandoned, and it's got all the cleats hanging off the side of the turret, and they're very rusty. It's a coloured photo, and it's all dripping down the side of the turret. So I believe it's for those. Nevertheless, the hole should be open. And yes, I have gone ahead and drilled every single one. I think it's about 96 tracks both sides, so 2 holes to each piece of track. Like I said, I wouldn't do it again, but I felt like I'd do it here. But if you didn't mind, just go with it. There is a slight recess, so you can kind of allude to the fact that there should be a hole. But if it's something you're really worried about, then I would probably just get some aftermarket tracks. There's a lot more available now after a couple of years with 3D printed ones. So I think that's the way to go. But what I actually did is, using a 0.5mm drill, is drilled a hole at the top, hole at the bottom, kind of wiggled the drill between it to open up the hole, and then use the extra thin cement just to get any kind of debris out of the gap. And it is effective, and you see it on the final model, and I see it, so I'm not displeased that I did it, but I think it was a lot of work for less payoff. The tracks in this kit are link and length, and you get a little jig to kind of set up the right sag to go over the idlers. Idlers? It's not idlers, it's return rollers. And we'll be getting to that shortly in the next frame, just getting off a bit of mould seam on the edge of the tracks. So here you go, typical Tamiya, ingenious, it just fits. You just get the parts, do what it says in the instructions, glue them up, and you get the perfect sag. Exactly what's needed. And you get 2 of these jigs, obviously one for each side. and the extra thin works very well. You can use a kind of heavier cement, because sometimes the extra thin doesn't have quite enough bond for this sort of thing. It's not always great for tracks, because you almost want a little bit of flexibility, and it's kind of either melted or it's not, and as soon as you flex it, it kind of breaks the join. And for that, you can use some of the more traditional glues, which are called kind of, what would they usually be called? Tamiya does one. It's got a white top, and it's more like a cement. It's much more like poly cement, that's it, from the old Airfix days when we were all starting out. It's that kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily melt it. The glue actually bonds the two pieces of plastic together, whereas Tamiya Extra Thin really relies on melting the two parts together. That's the difference between the two glues, really. So I'll leave you here now with a little bit of track joining and wheel cleaning, and we'll come back in a moment. Okay, so now the wheels are ready and we've done the initial set of tracks. It's now time to get the tracks on. So for that, I always like to start with the bottom run and get those lined up, and it's essential to make sure you check with the instructions, get the direction right, make sure the right amount of links are in there, etc, etc. And then it's just a case of working back from a point around the sprocket and the idler, because you'll find they'll both kind of hook on the tracks and they'll hold them on once you've started gluing them up. And then I use the jig that we used before, which isn't for the purpose of this, but it's just a way of helping me get the right amount of links glued together. So it comes into play here and there depending on what it is I'm doing, and then it's using the link and lengths. So you've got the individual links that go on the end of lengths of track to make up your right amount, and that's basically how we make it work. So you just follow the instructions as they say, and you shouldn't go far wrong. So it's just a case of lining it up, making sure it's hooked on, like I've said, to the sprocket and the idler. And then when you've got the right amount, you can actually glue it on if you want to keep them on, but I like to take them off separately. So once you've got near where you want to be and they're starting to go off, bearing in mind everything I've said about the different glues and stuff going forward, that you then start to build up the entire run, and then it's when you join the next pieces on, you'll find that it actually sort of clamps it around, and you'll be able to either pinch it and glue it on, or you can leave it in two separate parts and then sort of tease it off. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll see as we go forward. So just using the jig now, just to get the right amount of individual links set up, so that when we get on to going around the sprocket, I don't need to worry about how many have I got and having to glue them on in that moment. I've obviously let that bottom lot dry that you've just seen me put on before joining it on up to the sprocket now. And then we've got all individual links going around the sprocket, and again, glue them up, leave them to dry for a minute or two, and you'll then still get a bit more movement, but they shouldn't fall apart. And of course, once you join these two sections together, you'll find the little hook around the sprocket. So this is once it's dried overnight. I've come back, and now we do the top run, which we did previously. Apologies for the wobbly camera. And then it just slots in and ties it all together, if you don't knock it off clumsily with your fingers like I've done. So as you get it locked in, you'll find that you should have the right amount of sag and all the tracks lined up in the right all the track looking very good visually as it goes around. And then I just use this elastic band just to set it up while I apply the glue. It does look a little bit clumsy, but once it's all on and you can tease it around, what it's doing is giving you that hold where you don't need to have 5 hands. You're using the elastic band just to keep it in place and tease it all together and make sure it's touching the wheels, and then you're exactly where you want to be. You can see it's under tension. Obviously this elastic band is just right. Doesn't always work like that. And it's now just using the fine tuning with the tweezers just to make sure that the tracks all sit how I want them to look. Having weight in the right places, making sag in the right places, tension in the right places, and referring to the instructions, as you can see, which shows you how many you need, where they should go, and what the direction is. So now all the wheels come off because they're Tamiya, they got poly caps, and the tracks have come off, so we can now go on and build up the rest of the tank. Quite an ingenious way of having this front plate going in with these kind of side supports that you glue on, and then it just slots in nicely. Then we go on round and we make up the upper hole. And now this is a little bit complicated, but again, Tamiya engineering means that it just works. But it is a lot of parts coming together to make up an upper hole, and you do need to just be careful to make sure everything's aligned how it needs to be, and then all is well. So once the upper hole's done and we've got the sections on the rear there for the rear fenders, it's time to start filling in the doors back on the top where the engine is. And this is slightly off, I think, for the one I'm doing. we want the kind of desertized, tropical is what I mean, with the fans. So that's what we got here. That's the doors with the inlets for the fans. Now you can see there's a few ejector pin marks that show through there, which I wasn't massively happy about, but they are easy to deal with. You just sand them on the flat side. So on the side where they're showing, like that, sand them back and it's actually no problem. And I've also we've got some sort of intakes here on the, it's kind of a weird shape. See this? It's like a scoop, which is on the front plate. And they're access doors to get into the transmission. And they're meant to be wider and more hollow, sort of scooped out. I imagine they're sort of an intake to cool it down. So I just drilled those out. Well, I cut them out, really, rather than drilling them out. And now we're just test fitting with the upper hole, and it all snaps in nicely, just as I'd expect. And we're starting to get along with the build. So now it's onto the tools, just to finish off the parts for the hole. And here we've got the Tamiya moulded on tool clamp, so we don't need to worry about photo etch, but they are blocked in. So I like to hollow those out just by drilling through where the section is, and then I clean it out with a sharp edged file just to square off the hole, take out the kind of drill bit roundness to it, and then just use a bit of Tamiya extra thin just to smooth that out, and it works very well. As you can see, applied to the vehicle, and it's very effective. All those little details just go a long way to helping. So we're getting the gun barrel together here. It is a two-piece barrel, but not to worry, because all this gets covered. So this isn't what you actually see at the end of the model. You do have a slide moulded piece to go on there. This is kind of a sleeve that goes over what you just saw, and the barrel gets joined onto that. This is the end of the barrel here with the aerial deflector that goes on underneath as well. So if you wonder what that kind of weird shaped piece of metal is underneath the barrel of these types of tanks, it's a guide. So as it turns around with the aerial sticking up, it kind of bends the aerial nicely under it, and then the aerial will flick back up. Whereas if it was just the barrel, I think it used to snap the aerial or it'd get trapped. You'll see what I mean. It's what those two bits are sticking out for from the side. When we join the barrel in, you'll see all about it. So now it's building up the turret, same way as the hull. So it's like a multi-piece section to build it up, and it all comes together. It's relying on Tamiya's engineering, which does come through here, I'm glad to say. And what we're doing here is getting one of the side panels sorted out, ready to have the doors in. And the doors are open for this one because it comes with figures. So I've decided to leave them open. And with that, not glue them on, so they're separate as well. So there's a lot of sub-assemblies with this one as we go into the painting. And here you see, so we've got the kind of section of the bottom of the turret, and then it all joins on from there. And it is ingenious in how it's done, and very, very well executed. It's one of those things that makes you think, you know, probably only Tamiya could have pulled this off, really. With the rear plate joining in like that, I mean, it's just... well, it just fits. Not for everyone. You know, some people find it's not so much of a challenge, but if you want to get through to the painting, which I know a lot of you do, and get into the painting and weathering, then, well, you know, a Tamiya kit is the way to get there fast, for sure. No dramas in the builds, usually. Although this was more complex than some, and, you know, there was a couple of problems here and there, but I haven't made a big deal of them, because I think they're probably user error. Meaning I created the problems, but it is not like getting one of the 70s kits or one of the 1990s kits. There is a bit more going on there. So we just got the gun barrel gone on now, which was already joined into the front section of the turret, and now we've got the top part going in, and as you can see, it just clips in nicely. Fantastic stuff. Just what you want. We got a bit of a breech as well. This is the aerial deflector, just as I was mentioning before. As you can see, it joins on. Very nice. good kind of thickness to it as well. It's wouldn't say it's in scale, but it's close enough. You know, I wouldn't need to replace that with photo etch personally. And we've got a few holes there that I'm pointing out. It we just need to fill. But anything that's kind of removable, I leave off, including this turret bin, which is a nice part in itself again. But leave that off. It's actually not. I think it's glued on the final model, but I've only just I did it right at the end. I left it off for a while. There's a few more finishing touches just to build up the turret, and then we can have a look at what we got left. And there's a few sneak peeks at the end of what the actual final model is going to be like, so to hopefully keep you coming back. There you can see the cupola going on with all of the periscopes inside. Nice little piece of the model, that is. Lots of detail. And here we are. So this is everything now glued in. All the gaps filled, as it were. Cupola is being left off, so it's, you know, just place it in. And you can see that it's a very nice looking turret. It's all there. All the detail you want. Movable gun breech in there for the guys who like that. So you can see something through the doors. We're also going to have some figures going in there as well. Very pleasing model. Like I said, so it's kind of a two-side to this. If you want a really highly detailed Panzer IV F out of the box, this isn't it. There are better models out there. Dragon, Border Model, RFM, all worth looking at. But if you want a simple build, something you can pick off the shelf in your local model shop, well then this is more likely going to be presenting itself to you than those other ones. It's a little bit pricey. The figures are nice. All the other models don't come with figures, so if you like figures, that's something to think about as well. So there's the paint scheme that we're going to use. So it is in Russia, but it is a Tropin scheme. So we will go into that in the next video. And there are two colours on there. It's that very low contrast scheme. You can see the figures are in as well. Bit of heavy weathering, and it's on a base. So hopefully you enjoyed that. And there's something to learn there. So as always, thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out, if you want to help the channel, there's links down below to Patreon and PayPal. And as I say, next week we'll be back with part 2. So I'll see you then.